So this is a video where I believe modern aeroplanes, jet engines, can be something that's used to reach Mars, other planets, land, drop the cargo, then get up and leave and return to Earth. I believe rockets are a thing of the past, and rockets will be displaced by jet engine technology. Now here's why. Originally, I've discussed how there may be an anti-gravitational effect by simply rotating and using the vectors in an electromagnetic wave that can interact with the local radiation, alongside the force vectors, which could possibly create some kind of stream of radiation moving in one direction. So you can create this kind of pressure, which I've discussed elsewhere in other videos, so I'm not going to go over here. But there's an idea of how we can work with a field in certain areas of any kind of vehicle to make its mass less heavy, carry less weight. So we can have something of a far denser mass still behave as if it was something that was of a much smaller mass. Now that brings on to the idea that we have air coming into your typical, jet engine and being pumped out. So less dense air to more dense air, but you could also operate with plasma. So the idea here is we have air coming in, the air is burnt up and we have expanded air coming out. Typically, so we have this system already made for flying around. So what else could we do then to improve this system? To make some kind of hybridized aeroplane carrier for going to Mars and coming back. It won't look like your typical aeroplane because it will have to be hybridized with a spaceship idea. But it will still be quite similar. You would look at it and see it as something like a plane or jet. So we'd have air coming in, and we'd have a stage where you could use a microwave. A microwave where it's passing plasma through a magnetic ring, making the plasma move in a specific shape. So I'm hypothesizing if we make the plasma move in a circle, that plasma will produce or behave like an antenna and actually interact with the space-time around it, changing the state of space-time, meaning we could have this density either around the ship or around a section of the ship, which would propel space-time in a direction and also cause the ship to move incredibly fast, like a way of cheating the dynamic of moving faster than the speed of light. But gosh, it does sound ridiculous, doesn't it? It couldn't really be this easy, could it? But, it's just me having an idea, discussing of how I think the jet engine is going to evolve in some way or manner similar to this. So we use our plasma. We create these ring-like areas of data, but this data being produced by plasma is interacting with space-time. It's changing the state of the space-time around the ship or specific areas of it. And this is going to allow for a stream of space-time, possibly to move in one direction, but also allowing this ship to be propelled at what is a much, much higher speed than, anything we could think of. Because, NASA are talking about using 2 magnetic rings, but this ring data is passed into the area around the ship, allowing a faster movement of speed. So I think we should keep our eye on how plasma is being used. I've seen some videos about the Chinese using plasma to produce higher expansion in terms of the fuel being pumped out or the air being pumped out, but that's not how I believe the plasma is going to be used. I believe that's a function of how plasma can be used, but I think this is how most people who are considering plasma for a ship or aeroplane to move faster, this is how I believe the innovative thinkers, possibly, unless I'm the only one who thinks this is how they're going to move. So when we look at plasma, we have positive and negative ions, but we've also got some flux going on in there. Before any electric field, there's always flux, and flux also represents a particle before the electric field. Positive ions will move in one way, negative ions will move in another. So if we have a ring, we'd have like these positive ions moving in one way, negative moving in the other. We could also have some kind of collisions, which would be interesting, because these collisions could, in theory, be strong enough again to push space-time in one direction, but I can't elaborate about that. All I can say is that when we use plasma in the way I'm talking about, we will change the state of space-time or of the air around the ship dynamic, and something that seems heavier may seem as though it's lighter, may even seem that it's heavier, but I think in a void plasma will oscillate even outside of a void, but the oscillation of the plasma will have a frequency. And I believe the void of space-time isn't actually a void, but it's the changing of states of material. And because of this similarity, I think plasma is a good idea for, putting into spacecraft, alongside where I'm using, electromagnetic waves in another video for the NASA proposal. But this here I'm going to put into, another playlist. But I think people should consider plasma as an idea, and also the different materials used to create the plasma from may have different effects. But I think that even if you had something like petroleum or some kind of petrol-like, fuel, you could make it oscillate, but you could make it have different frequencies of oscillation. So even if it's not the best fuel around, you could probably still use typically a variety of fuels. Although I think there's probably one fuel or two which would probably be the best fuels to use for, various reasons. So here we come to it. So this is the drawing of an aeroplane with two intakes and an outtake. So we have our plane that can fly through, the air normally as we expect, take us up higher into the atmosphere. Once we get to a certain level, we can switch to, burning the plasma. And then what will happen is, I believe, the plasma will open up these almost like planes of data, because the plasma is acting like an antenna. And these planes of data will change the state of the air around the ship. So what does this mean? I think this is going to be an idea of how a ship can move through space at incredible speeds that we haven't envisioned before, and also that this plasma can also, produce or carry on with ideas of harmonic drives and warp. And I believe, in my own, little world, that I think the warp drives we see in sci-fi that, get us interested in, sci-fi and traveling through space, I think will first be developed by the evolution of the jet engine. I believe a jet engine will only have to have a few more components to it to make it into the warp drive that we consider as being a true warp drive for moving through space. But most people never consider actually that a jet engine has already met the principles of being a warp drive because of how it changes the density of air. Warp can be more than one idea. And this idea, I think, is something that's basic, that everybody who's, worked with any kind of vehicle can get their heads around. And I think Alcubierre, and I don't know if I'm even saying this wrong, I think people are struggling with his ideas because they think they have to make all these, potential new materials, these potential new particles, etc., etc. And all you may need is either a density of light moving around in a circle, or even some plasma becoming dense in its saturation, moving around in a circle. And I know this must sound absolutely ridiculous, but this is just me talking hypothetically of what I think will take people to Mars, of what I think will work, of what I think will make lots of money, and what I think will be relatively cheap for anybody to do.